cover any of the campaigns in detail, but if anyone would like to speak about their involvement in any of the particular campaigns, maybe now would be a good time to start.
Could I just add a little bit to what Jim's been saying there? One of the things that most working class history never gets recorded, and that's why the importance of this kind of archive is so fundamental. Otherwise the victors get to write their history and just airbrush you out. But I remember, I think one of the most spectacular achievements in propaganda terms by Workers' City Group was to get the whole review in the New York Review of Books, which was wonderful. And Lally had no control over it, he couldn't suppress it in any way. And there was this American professor, I forget his name now, who was coming across to have an interview. And I remember getting a phone call, I can't remember who did it now, but Michael, can you go and pick up this professor as he comes in to the station, at Central Station, and bring him to the Scotia Bar? And as luck would have it, there had been a very heavy fall of snow in Glasgow. It had been well trampled in, then it had frozen, so it was really like a skating rink. There was virtually no transport down to this. I thought, we'll just walk there, and by the time we got to the Scotia Bar, no sign of anybody. So then went off to, we were told that we were in King Street meeting in a shop, and I looked in the window before I went in, and there's Hugh Savage sitting, very grim, and obviously there'd been a falling out round the table and nobody was speaking to anybody. I thought, oh God, what a first impression this guy's going to get of Glasgow politics. So he went in, and the meeting was quite chilly, and it broke up, and we all headed back for the Scotia Bar to get a warm up because it was freezing outside. And when we get in there, Ned Donaldson suddenly mentioned early jazz, and I knew nothing at all about Ned's vast expertise in that. But the professor did. The professor who was there to review Workers' City and all the rest of it, his pet subject was introducing jazz as a subject into American university curriculum, and he just lit up like a candle when Ned started to mention jazz, and the two of them started swapping notes, who recorded what, when, and we just all sat there in the glow of it all and let them go on for about 10 minutes. I thought, you can't capture that moment anywhere else. That was lightning in a bottle, because it was up to that point it looked like it was going to be a PR disaster. It was wonderful, and Ned just bringing out all this hidden knowledge that he had of jazz, and it really was fundamental. He had a great knowledge of it. I remember later on he came to my house and I was playing some pirate tape of Count Basie and Kelvin Hall. I didn't even know that it was illegal. That shows how naive. I'm sitting with an old Russian type two-reeler tape recorder like that. No bother me hide it, because I didn't realise it was illegal, so I was playing it to him. And his knowledge of every member of the orchestra, he could name them on, who was on now, and that's a great show. Somebody's missing here, this is slightly out of tune, and he could name the member of the orchestra who that day didn't make it to the Glasgow concert. So that kind of knowledge. And that's where all the snobbery that we spent our time in museums fighting against, the idea that working class people by definition don't count, cannot possibly, they don't have a piece of paper stuck to their chest saying, this is me certified for life, an expert. That just cut through that like a hot knife through butter. You could, the richness of Glasgow's working class culture personified in one member of the Workers' City Group.
There was also, you could also say it was the inverse of that, because Pat Lally actually wrote to complain to the New York Review of Books. He actually wrote to complain. Why you? I mean, in the opposite way, that shows a kind of a sort of broadness from
Yeah.
Lally. You think, Christ almighty, what a stupid thing to do. Anyway, yeah, that's right.
I'll say a wee couple of things. I got involved with the Workers' City Group in 1990. I was one of the youngest folk involved, probably. I was still at art school doing a postgraduate. And I got invited along to. I already knew about the Free University Group and been to the meetings there and got involved with those. They were quite exciting. There was a lot of stuff going on. I'd been to Self-Determination and Power Conference in Govan in the Pierce in the early 1990, or was it late 1990? I can't quite remember. I'd met some folk, and my eyes were getting kind of open to kind of what I would kind of class alternative politics, because up until then I was just disillusioned with parliamentarian politics and all the bullshit that was going on that I could see, and I wasn't, I'd just been switched off by it by a lot of young folk. I remember being in my studio and Ross Sinclair, an artist, one of my peers at the time, said, "Oh, you should come along to this meeting. I'm going to this thing in Scotia with these folk." And it was mainly guys. There were some women involved, as Tommy mentioned. But it was gender bias was pretty kind of traditional kind of male working class kind of folk getting involved with these things. That's another kind of thing to investigate, I think. But I remember turning up at the thing and just being, fuck, these people who are writers and artists and disillusioned Labour Party members, ex-CP folk, kind of Marxists, anarchists, trade unionists, just rank and file folk, a whole range of folk in the one room, leaving their own kind of politics, as it were, to decide, or all the people had the similar politics. Really, it was all about disillusion with the status quo, and that's for me just kind of was so fucking exciting. Ross kind of didn't stay around too much. Billy was involved as well at that time. Billy was involved with Transmission. I was briefly involved with Transmission, an artist-led gallery, artist-run gallery. So it was a kind of DIY thing. So things overlapped. There were interesting things that were overlapping. And getting involved in 1990 really is the crux, because that was the year of culture, and pretty much, you throw a stone, you'd hit some sort of art funding. And most folk in the arts, not just the visual arts, but it was a kind of whole range of arts, were really lapping this shit up. And I was, for one, even then, was thinking this is crap. Because I remember one of the things applying for funding, I think it was at Mayfest, when Mayfest still ran, I was applying for funding for putting one work. I'm getting told, if you don't get any money for Mayfest, well, that's your art fund, that's your art. You only get to do it once a year, basically. And the 1990 thing was exactly the same. It was like, if you applied and got funding, or if you didn't get funding, it was like, fuck off, and luck, pal, you had your chance last year. That's it, no more funding, that's it. It was that kind of attitude towards the arts. And that was the attack on culture and the arts generally that the Workers' City also was against. And that was the thing that kind of got lost a bit. It was all this thing about anti-art and stuff. It was far from anti-art, it was far from it. It was supporting the fact that kind of arts groups and kind of it was Easter House and other places were getting shut down to fund 1990. Cultural community arts groups were getting closed to prop up some sort of temporary, not even a permanent legacy. The new word legacy wasn't even around then, but these things were getting kind of shut down to fund temporary exhibitions of kind of leading class art, that kind of just a PR exercise just for control, really. I'm not to ramble a bit. But for me, as a young person coming into this was all brand new to me, and from that I just felt at home, and I've pretty much been in that home for the last 30 years with similar folk in different organisations, different groups, doing our own work, getting involved with things from working with folk in the kind of in the Clydeside Action on asbestos, to the Free University, to the Black and Third Borough Book Fair, which we kind of took off and did some events in Glasgow, been involved with things in Edinburgh, lots and lots, too many things to talk about in this thing, but Workers' City for me was one of the big things, the kind of linchpins of all these directionals that came from the people involved and the attitude towards the kind of struggle.
I think I took the initiative in doing the first Keeley, and it was adopted by the group. I had a lot of fun with the Keeley. One of the things folk talk about is being scurrilous. It's like a private eye thing. It was never meant to be like the private eye. It was more based on a tradition like in France and in Paris during the French Revolution, they had a broadsheet called Le Pierre Duchesne, which came from the groundswell of the sans-culottes, and it expressed that, and that was suppressed obviously in the course of the French Revolution. But in 1871, in the Paris Commune, it reappeared, just appeared out of nowhere, the same news sheet with the same name, and that ran till that was suppressed as well. So I always felt that the Keeley was in that tradition rather than the scurrilous nonsense we used to get in the private eye.
I was thinking there was some of the other radical papers. I was thinking of John Barker and the one in Swansea. There was also Steel City.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there were different ones on throughout the UK at that time. But it was also one of the important things that Workers' Society recognised was to name names, and not to allow those people who were making the decisions to remain anonymous. And that was part of what we were doing within the Keeley, was if that's a councillor who's being corrupt or is linked in any way to dope or whatever is going on, name them. They're all Labour Party. No one's caring about like Tories or anybody else. No, it doesn't matter about them. But it was really important to nail the ones who were pretending to be left in any way. These were the ones we were going after. That was a really important thing, and that's what gave them such a shock, I think, to see their name written down as the ones who were trying to sell off Glasgow Green, for instance, or the ones who had committed the shameful act with Elspeth King to make her reapply for a job that she virtually created, the whole damn thing, you know. These things also made people very angry. You know, as Ewan's pointing out in terms of the cultural and art, kind of that as well. So these were never divorced from politics. There was never a kind of specialist thing that was politics. You know, I mean, I remember that, for example, Ned Donaldson's nephew, Jim Mackay, who was involved as a male nurse, and Jim, this is only one example, he could bring information about what was going on within National Health at that time, you know. So there were these different people who were giving us information, knowing that it was kind of trustworthy in that sense. Nobody was beating any political drum here. People were working with each other, you know. So just in terms of like the Keeley origins, it's an important thing that in terms of what Tommy was saying, he ended lamely.
We did try to get used by the Labour Party on a couple of occasions. Someone presented us a big draft of letters that was supposed to be the love letters, illicit love letters from the Lady Provost to a fellow councillor. No, that's not one. That's not one. Take it away. Someone has spent days and days compiling all these fake love letters. I expect us. Oh, great! This is just what we're looking for.
Is there anybody, someone else who, you know, coming in talking about? Anyone remember the tactics that we used in terms of the meetings to sell off Glasgow Green when the Labour Party or the Labour Council were forced into holding a huge public meeting, and they tried to avoid it in every way they could, and then when in fact eventually they were forced, they said, well, we're going to hold them here, here, here and here, and I think they named maybe either 3 or 4 different venues. So we had to try and work out from there which one is Lally and all the heavies, which one are they going to attend, you know. So it was like a process of deduction, trying to work that out, and eventually we thought, I bet it's that one just across the river, you know, that one in the Gorbals, you know. So well, we all turned up there, and sure enough, that was where Larry and we all walked in. They were, oh no!
So I think that's the real value, the Spirit of Revolt archive, and we need to try to exploit that more in some way. We need to try to advertise that. It's a living thing, it's no just some dusty old archive. Also, just a couple of wee anecdotes about the time, about what was going on at the time. Pat Lally was actually one of our councillors up in Castlemilk where we stayed. at the time of these events, and we already had let's say we had a mutual hatred of each other, you know, which I've always been really happy about, you know. And at the end of the day, I won because I'm here and he's dead. How's that for vindictiveness, you know? But I remember prior to Worker City and so on, we used to produce numerous things up in Castlemilk with the help of Clydeside Press. And they produced a thing up there, Labour View, the Labour Party came round and swamped the place with these Labour views that was all the glossy PR stuff. So of course we had an alternative to that. We had Labour Screw, you know, a bent screw nail in the front. And I remember we'd get a bundle of them printed, we're all making our way out to distribute them. And one of the newcomers to the group had went like, oh, hold on a minute, he said, I've just read this. He says, you know, it's libelous. And we said, oh, I've had it checked by a lawyer. We always do that, you know. So it was that kind of, that mixture of different groups and different people, but with the same kind of anger against the city council. And I don't know to what extent that still exists today with young people, because the climate change stuff and the Extinction Rebellion stuff, as Eric and I were talking about earlier on, it's good to see people doing something, but they've not got any real political understanding of what's going on. You know, that's my point of view at any rate.
And a lot
So,
of people just now imagine that the council's different.
Aye,
Because it's now
I would
SNP.
imagine
And they
that's the
don't
case,
realise
aye.
they're just behaving the same way as they always did.
So I would hope that the people here that are now in their 70s, like me, are still feel that they're relevant. And I hope that younger people still feel that the stuff in the Spirit of Revolt archive and maybe our points of view are relevant as well, you know.
I think one of the things that's different now, someone was mentioning, you said that you wrote a book recently about the city council and got very little reaction. I think one reason why is people are so cynical. As we saw the Labour Party, which everybody's been talking about, here get voted out of office, and there were a lot of illusions about what was going to happen, and very little happened. You know, it's not a whole lot different than it was under the Labour Party. And so I think by now people become increasingly cynical, and it's that kind of cynicism that's hard to overcome. I think that's what's exciting about the climate change. It's so dramatic and drastic that young people are forced, in a way, into action to overcome that cynicism. And it's not because it's going to be easy to win. Forget that. It's to actually try and deal with climate change will require revolutionary changes. You're talking about, a very serious problem that's going to require all kinds of changes, most of which are beyond the capitalist system. So it's not going to be easily won, and I can't really believe that the young people involved in the climate change movement believe it's going to be easily won. So I think we should do away with that idea that there are going to be easy victories that we're going to build on. That's not really the way social change happens. Certainly not in late capitalism when the whole thing is falling apart anyway. And I wanted to respond to what Ewan said, because I thought that's important, that it is important to build organizations that can draw upon people coming from different traditions. And if everybody is going to say, I'm not going to work with so-and-so, we're not going to get very far. And that's what the system wants. They can divide us that way. You used to be in the CP, even though you're trashing it now, I won't deal with you. That's not going to work. That kind of attitude is not going to work. We're going to have to learn how to work with people coming from different traditions who have somewhat different perspectives. And I think we're going to have to actually discuss theoretical differences as well. Not that we're going to find there's some easy, let's vote, that kind of thing, but they should be on the table. This is what people's different perspectives are, and that's part of what you have to live with to build a genuine movement. And I doubt very much in the future if there's going to be a movement built around the trust on one person. I'm very skeptical about that, because that only can extend to a very small group of people, and we need to build a mass movement, and that's going to involve people coming from different traditions, different personalities, some of whom aren't going to like each other. That's just the way life is. Not everybody loves everybody else, but you learn how to work together in a movement. I came out of the 60s the anti-war movement in the United States. And believe me, there were all kinds of political and personal disagreements, but we didn't put them aside, but we worked together because we knew there was a common enemy and a common goal to stop the war. And I think that's that kind of spirit that we need now.
But you see, one of the things that, again, that in a way it wasn't necessary in Workers' City for those who had come from the Free University, because that was the essence of the Free University, was the kind of discussions, I think, that John Cooper was referring to, where, and they were very solid politically in terms of, and people were very aware of things like gender issues. Somebody referred, Bob spoke, or somebody referred to the meeting in West Princess Street in Queen's Crescent and the club there. Me and Cathy Thompson chaired that because it was part of the Free Uni, and it makes me think of what's going on in Roshava just now. In that sense, in which there has to be a male and female involved in all of these positions. There has to be a female mayor as well as a male mayor. There has to be the female member of parliament, the HDP, the Old Day Kurdish group. This is part of it, and the other thing that's happened with the Öcalan and the Kurdish movement is that sense of change. To actually give up being a straight Marxist. I'm thinking here of the PKK, to give up being a Marxist party. You know, like and they've moved into this confederalist thing where they're recognising difference within the community and discussion and so on. It's not to say that theoretical things they're really worthwhile, but the SOR could act as that basis. Because the great thing about the archive is it has all these different left positions, so they can actually be used as a basis. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. If you're building a movement, to continue to build a movement, because it's already it's in a stage of development, surely, but it does need that. You can't keep going inventing the wheel, as John was mentioning, you know, and you have the chance of making use of that because of this thing, the SOR. And what's there, and there is so many ways you could use SOR to develop that. If there was even maybe a monthly or even a 2 monthly, but some kind of regular meeting in that sense, it was a kind of open one for with different topics. And that's only off the top of my head the way the Free Uni, some of the positive side of the Free Uni used to be.
You want to say something there? No, okay.
I was going to ask you, Jim, have you ever heard of any, because I think it's one of the unresearched projects, many that we had at the People's Palace that went in the bin because there wasn't enough time. Harry McShane used to talk about that building in Renfrew Street called the Workers' Open Forum. So I think of the title, I'm thinking about the Free University and thinking maybe there's a continuity there.
That was about the Queen's Arcade, I think, around that area, wasn't it? They just walked through from Cacao.
It was the SLP, it was the Socialist Labour Party Press, and I mentioned a meeting last year at the STUC. It was about in fact 2 years ago, about celebrations in Dublin and all the anniversaries coming up, and James Connolly, and said, well, Harry McShane used to always mention a paper called Dark Rosaleen, and there were a lot of people who were Owen Dudley Edwards and people like that who were in the audience who said they'd never heard of it. And I said, well, Harry said that it was Major White of the Irish Citizen Army used to come to Glasgow with the actual text, and they set it up in Glasgow, printed
that would be
it
Arthur
there, and
McManus
he
and people.
took it back with him.
That would have been 1906 to 19 before the formation of it, 1913 or something. It was probably these people around with Arthur McManus, I'm sure, which could include Helen Crawford and Bell, the CP guy. It's really important. Yeah, well, these links become.
Having come from that meeting, I thought, well, there must be something on. Just did a check on Dark Rosaleen, and it turns out there's a case held in Glasgow guy gets caught in Glasgow Green. As Harry had said, it was distributed there. He's got 2 copies of Dark Rosaline in one pocket, and he's got his detonators right in. So he got 5 years hard labour, and hard labour would be unanimously by the jury. Didn't take any time to think about it. But I haven't seen the original trial papers. They will be there in Register House, and maybe even copies of the paper kept as evidence, because they did take things quite, sometimes spasmodically, but often they did take elements of the evidence, just put them in the box of the papers and box them up.
Yeah.
So there's a project for somebody younger.
I read recently that they
Yeah.
they used to ship them over from Glasgow to Dublin in shipments of glass, and they were caught once, and that was the last time that happened. They packed them up in sheets of glass to get through the various custom checks and things. But one day some custom officer was in the ball and opened them up and realised that the papers were coming from Glasgow, and that's what stopped.
That would be McManus and the people
Yes,
around
yeah.
forward and so on as well, you
That's
know.